And I would just like to acknowledge Resorts and all of the help that they give us throughout the years that we've been here. They're lovely people to work with. We couldn't ask for more. I do think that our Executive Vice President, Mark Sakis, is here. Mark, if you are. Oh, would you come to the microphone and say a few words? Thank you, Mark.
Good morning, everybody. Unfortunately, Mark Giantonio couldn't be here today, so I am here to welcome you. So I want to welcome you and the Southern New Jersey Development Council to Resorts for the Sound Off for South Jersey event. You know, we've been the host location for this for many, many years. I know it's at least 8 based on what I was told. So it's been a great event. I've been to it many, many times. Very informative, very interesting. And so we're looking forward to, I guess, a same very informative event today. There's a lot going on in the world and politics, so I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say. And we appreciate everyone being here. Hopefully you will enjoy the program. We have a great breakfast for you. And hopefully you can join us up at the pool at the networking reception, closing network reception after this event is over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have several elected officials in the room. Bear with me. We're going to run through this as fast as we can. While breakfast is being served. So we're going to try to do 2 things at one time, which I think we all do well. So just let me acknowledge some elected officials. You'll hear from some of them in a few minutes. But starting with Senator John Burzichelli, Assemblyman Minority Leader Louis Greenwald, Assembly Majority Whip, Carol Murphy, Gloucester Township Mayor Dave Mayer, Woodbine Mayor William Picolicki, Commissioner from the Casino Control Commission Joyce Molyneux, Jane Aselta from the New Jersey Department of Agriculture as the State Director. And we do have 2 folks here from our elected community, representing our elected community. One is from Senator Booker's office. Mackenzie Billing is here, so if you need anything or you need to talk to Mackenzie, we'll put you together with her. Also from Andy Kim's office, Ben Giovine is also here, so if you need to speak to any of the aides, they are here for you to talk to. So with that, I would like to acknowledge some personal friends, colleagues of mine from the Cape May County Chamber. Barbara Jones is here. I'd like to say hello to Barbara from the State Chamber of Commerce. Old friend of mine, Mike Eggington. 2 people of very big help to us, partners in almost everything we do. So thank you very much for being here. And also, just to acknowledge our college presidents, Dr. Gaba is here from Atlantic Cape Community College. Thank you, Dr. Gaba. From Rowan College of South Jersey, Dr. Fred Keating, someplace out there. Thank you very much for your attendance and your support throughout the year. So this is the long part, and I know you've been very quiet and very attentive, and I thank you for that, but I'm not done. So let me make mention of sponsors. Today's title sponsor is Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind, and you'll hear from them in a few minutes. Presenting sponsors, AT&T, Atlantic City Electric, Comcast, PSC&G Nuclear, Rowan College of South Jersey, Rowan University. Lanyard sponsor, as you can see on your lanyard, Elect 825. Gina, thank you for your help. Closing reception sponsors, GEI Consultants, South Jersey Port Corp., Volunteers of America, Delaware Valley. So thank you for those major sponsors and supporting sponsors. And by the way, they do have exhibits, so don't forget to see what's at those exhibit tables. And we have quite a few of them. Atlantic Cape Community College, Atlantic Care, Balea Print, Connor Strong and Buckaloo, Digneo Engineering, First Harvest Credit Union, First National Bank of Elmer, Fulton Bank, Greenman Peterson, HBK CPAs, HopeWorks, Hutchinson Mechanical, Inspira Health Network, Integrated RCM Services, Maryville Integrated Care, Bintz Insurance Agency, New Jersey American Water, New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program, PCH Technologies, Performance Marketing, PS&S, Stokes Creative Group, TD Bank, Triad Associates, and Visit South Jersey. And I would ask you to say thank you. Their support is invaluable. So thank you very much, sponsors. And to the Planning Committee, and you'll see them listed on your program book, most of them are here, and we thank you for your assistance in putting today's program together. So now I would like to call on Ken Mosca, who's the External Affairs Director for Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind. I think Ken has a few comments on behalf of Atlantic Shores. Oh, there you are, Ken. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm well. Nice seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you for that rousing round of applause. I promised my good friend Matt Levinson that I would be brief, and I will be brief, but it's great to see so many friends here today. As Marlene said, my name's Ken Mosca. Maybe some of you in the room know me. I am the External Affairs Lead for Atlantic Shores, and we're working on, as you know, our first wind project. I want to thank Marlene and the Southern Jersey Development Council for hosting this wonderful event this morning. As Marlene said, it's 42 years already. My, how time flies. And it's our honor really to be the title sponsor and be with so many, as I said, friends and distinguished people here today. Atlantic Shores is really immensely proud to be part of the business community and share our excitement with what we are building here in Atlantic County. Offshore wind gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform and grow the region's economy. And we are making great progress and to deliver on that process, on that progress. We are working with firms such as Cambridge & Goley and Riggs Distler that will create opportunities for local contractors and businesses. A lot of opportunity. I want to be clear about that. We are partnering with the South Jersey and Atlantic Cape building trades to negotiate a PLA that ensures family-sustaining jobs for our community. And we're investing in our children and their futures as clean energy leaders of tomorrow, which is what we absolutely need. With approximately $2 billion in positive economic impact from our first project alone, Atlantic Shores is committed to delivering the economic and environmental benefits of offshore wind for our communities. But let us be clear. The stakes are high. We need to keep saying yes to safe, reliable, renewable energy. Yes to cleaner air, yes to good paying jobs, and yes to better quality of life for all of us. Atlantic Shores is proud to be here today. I want to thank Marlene again for the opportunity to make remarks here this morning. I hope everyone has a great event here today, a great Friday, and a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. I just realized that Assemblyman Dave Bailey is with us. Where are you, Dave? There you are. Thank you for being here. Yeah, you're an awfully quiet crowd today. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the fog. But you're allowed to be a little more lively. So I'm going to call, I think we have the right person to be lively. The next speaker, and we're pleased to have him with us, is U.S. Senate candidate Curtis Bashaw. And Curtis, you have two jobs today. You're going to have to liven up this crowd for us and also give us your message. Curtis is a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. He is the former executive director of the CRDA and the founder of Cape Resorts, and certainly no stranger to South Jersey. So if you would please welcome Curtis Bashaw.
Okay, so how do we liven this group up? I'm Curtis Bashaw. Thanks, Marlene, very much. It's great to be here today. You know, I am a born and bred South Jerseyan. I grew up, my mom was from Haddonfield, dad from Collingswood, and I grew up in Cherry Hill, went to K through 9 in those schools. We summered at the Jersey Shore. I started working when I was 15 years old, carrying bags, checking people in, flipping pancakes, taking out the trash. So it was, I love hospitality. I love South Jersey. After college, I came back and got involved in redevelopment work. Notably, I convinced my dad to help me buy a little abandoned building on Jackson Street in Cape May and try to renovate it. 6 banks said no to that dream. Finally, a 7th said yes, and the Virginia Hotel opened in 1989 with 35 employees. We have grown that business in Cape May through the renovations of Congress Hall, the Sandpiper, the Beach Shack, the Star Inn, creating Beach Plum Farm, payroll by payroll, budget by budget for 35 years to over 1,115 employees. That's economic development. I am proud of that track record, and I love this part of our state. I got involved in this race because I believe that New Jersey can do better. I served in Atlantic City here in 2004 and 5. I'm a lifelong Republican, but I was appointed by a Democratic governor to run the CRDA, the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority. I got to know New Jersey politics and made friends on Democrats, Republicans, independents, state agencies, community groups, associations like this, and we like to bring people together to get things done. A development council. It's nice to see, touch, and feel the work that gets accomplished when we work together to make our communities strong, vibrant, and vital. You know, after that, I worked on the Stockton board for 12 years. Again, in a bipartisan way, we took Stockton over my tenure from 2,000 day students to an 8,000 strong residential university. What great work that was. So as we got into this stage of life, and we had corruption scandal again in this Senate seat, I decided it was time for some political outsiders and some business people to go to Washington to do better for our state. You know, we've been on a race to the bottom. We're 49th out of the 50 states in what we get back from the federal government. I don't like being second to last, do you? I mean, I think we can do better. We have had a Democratic monopoly on this Senate seat for 52 years. I don't think we can keep sending the same party back to Washington and expect it to do better. And I'll make this pitch to Cory's associate. I know Cory Booker. What a great guy. I met him in Newark when he was mayor. We've had some really interesting conversations through the years. But if we win this seat, New Jersey will be one of 5 or 6 states with a split delegation. I think that's good for an independent state like New Jersey, to have a Republican caucusing and a Democratic caucusing to get stuff done for our state. So my case to you is I'm a political outsider, I'm a business guy, I am a fiscal conservative. I don't think we can spend our way to prosperity. I don't think we can regulate ourselves to innovation and success and growth. And so I'm a pro-business candidate. I'm a social moderate. I'm a gay married man who's pro-choice. I don't think we should have governments in our homes telling us what to do. We have got to let the acrimony out of our politics and get things done for our state. So I'm here today proud. I would be proud to represent South Jersey in the United States Senate. Have we had a United States Senator from South Jersey? I don't think so. So I want to be the first one of those who understands this part of the state very, very well, work together with all of you to do good things. Thank you for letting me be here today, Marlene, and enjoy your breakfast.
Well, thank you, Curtis, on both requests. You did liven us up, and that was a great message, so thank you very much. We do have another U.S. Senate candidate, Congressman Kim, who is in Washington and could not be with us, has sent a message to us. And if you look at the screen, I think we will be ready to see that message.
Hi, everyone. I'm Congressman Andy Kim, and just congratulations on another year of Sound Off for New Jersey, gathering together so many leaders in our community to talk through what our state and our region needs. It's so important. I'm continuing to do the work here in the United States Congress, as I've been for 6 years, trying to work alongside all of you to try to build up the investments we need to propel our state and our country forward in a very turbulent time. As many of you know, I got my start working in national security and foreign policy. I was someone that worked as a career public servant under both Republicans and Democrats, and I'm trying to bring that same spirit of public service to the work that I do in the United States Congress. Over the last 6 years, I tried to focus in on what it is that we can deliver for our communities to help us grow at this very challenging moment. A lot of what I was focused on is trying to help support American global competitiveness in an era of just outsized challenges that we face, whether that's rising challenges vis-a-vis China or other complexities that we're facing globally that's affecting our ability to try to ensure that America will be a global economic and political leader for the next 100 years. I currently work on the Select Committee on U.S.-China Competition, working together in a bipartisan way to come up with solutions that are simultaneously about leveling the playing field and making sure that we're in an environment where American businesses can thrive, where innovation can succeed, but also making sure that we're making the investments we need to back home to be able to ensure that we have the kind of workforce as well as skill set and innovation capital to be able to deliver. And that's why we tried to work on and pass in a bipartisan way the CHIPS and Science Act, the largest investment in advanced manufacturing in modern American history, something that's trying to supercharge our country, make sure that our supply chain is more resilient and guard us from global price shocks as we've seen over the last few years, especially during the pandemic. You know, these are the types of investments that I hope can really try to ensure that we can not only keep prices low for American families, but also create a business climate and an innovation atmosphere that is going to ensure our ability to lead in energy, in technologies, in AI, and so many other fields. That paired with an investment in our own community and our own infrastructure. And the bipartisan infrastructure law was critical to be able to bring back billions of dollars back to New Jersey, to be able to invest in our roads, our bridges, our tunnels, our public transit, which we know is a huge problem in our state with the reliability, but also what we see down in South Jersey is, we are in a public transit desert. So it's not just about the reliability of our public transit up north and the problems that we've had leading into Penn Station, but also making sure that we can spread the public transit investment across our entire state. And I hope to continue to be able to build on that, to be able to work with you about what the needs are of our businesses, of our workers, to be able to ensure that we can create the kind of environment in South Jersey that's going to allow us to be able to thrive going forward. And those are the types of things that we've seen, whether it's with the Gateway Tunnel up north, which is trying to ensure not just our state and our region's economic security, but our nation's. And that's something where I hope to be able to continue to bring and ensure the federal resources to be able to make sure that our state is in good hands and we can continue that project going forward. Hand in hand with investments like the Inflation Reduction Act and others, which have supercharged investments into energy storage, production, innovation in so many ways, really has been such an incredible signal to the market about the investment that our country is willing to make on this writ large. So those are some of the big picture things that we've been looking at and trying to draw forward when it comes to global competitiveness. We've also, and I will continue to do so, invest in the workforce development. New Jersey, we're proud of our great schools. I'm a product of public schools in New Jersey, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to thrive in that investment, continue to make sure that our young students are able to have like the kind of 2-year or 4-year college or to be able to have the apprenticeships or the trade school skill sets that we can continue to push forward on. And the investments we made in the infrastructure law is trying to ensure that we have that investment in the workforce of the future in many different ways. And we have a number of other bills that are trying to increase that to be able to ensure that we have the high-skilled labor as well to be able to push forward, both through our own development of education and STEM education in particular, but also through high-skilled labor, immigration that we know our business community needs. I've had many conversations with many of you about the need for us to be able to move past this political stagnation and toxicity when it comes to immigration and recognize that we are stronger as a country when we bring in high-skilled labor and skill sets to be able to push forward in the same way that my father was able to be able to come here and study and be able to contribute 50 years ago. So on a lot of different fronts, we want to push forward. And certainly for South Jersey, this is something that means it's very personal to me as someone who grew up here. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to have the kind of representation we need. I know we're not always at the forefront of minds, whether in Trenton or in DC, but we need to have a voice in the room and a seat at the table. As someone who's worked on the Small Business Committee for a number of years in Congress, worked on a lot of these issues of small business through the pandemic and some of the most difficult times, I've gotten to see what it is that so many are calling for and needing, whether that's with access to capital, cutting the red tape, and other problems that I hope that I can be a continued source of partnership on going forward. It's been really wonderful working alongside many of you. Others I haven't had the chance to be able to meet, and I hope to do so going forward. But I'm grateful for this opportunity to say a few words in this incredible forum. But most importantly, I just say it's been a real honor to be able to serve this state, to be able to engage in public service. And now more than ever, I think it's important that we have and lift up that sense of public service, that sense of civility in a time of such toxicity. And I've unfortunately seen a lot of that, but on the other hand, I've also seen a lot of ability to be able to reach across the aisle, to be able to engage. As a Democrat that won a district Trump won twice, as someone who's worked in some of the most divided parts of our state, I've learned how to be able to connect and how to make sure we just focus in on what it is that we're trying to deliver for so many people in our own community, whether that's the new VA health center that we're opening up in Ocean County soon, or the other things that we've been doing to make sure we're just addressing where the rubber hits the road. And I hope that that sense of workhorse, not show horse, is something that you appreciate. So I hope to have the chance to be able to continue to engage with all of you. I wish you all the best and have a great day. Take care.
Well, thank you both to our U.S. Senate candidates. Excellent message from both. I just want to remind you that this is meaningless unless we exercise our privilege of voting, which is, as you know, November 5th. So let's not forget that's an important date for us. So moving into our program, I'd like to introduce the moderator for the first panel, who is Dr. Brigid Harrison, the chair and professor of political science and law at Montclair University. She is the author of American Democracy, now one of the leading introductory political science textbooks in the United States. She is also the author of A More Perfect Union, Power and Society, and Women in American Politics. We're thrilled to have her with us. Please welcome Dr. Harrison.
I guess I could have gone that way. Thanks, Marlene. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Cool. Okay, good. So I'm excited to be here today. You can feel the excitement in the air. We have a big election coming up, right? Only what, 13 months away? That was funny. I would like to introduce you to the esteemed legislators that will be joining me today. First, we have Senator John Burzichelli. As you know, Senator Burzichelli has represented New Jersey's 3rd legislative district since January, after defeating incumbent Ed Durr in last year's election. Prior to his state Senate win, Burzichelli represented the 3rd district in the state assembly from 2002 to 2022, spending 16 years as deputy speaker. Assembly Majority Louis Greenwald has represented the 6th legislative district since taking office in 1996, when he was 11 years old. Lou, really? And Assembly Majority Whip Carol Murphy has represented the 7th legislative district since 2018. From 2020 to 2021, she served as the deputy majority leader and has been the majority whip since 2022. And of course, many of you realize that Carol ran a competitive and gracious race for Andy Kim's House seat. She and I can join a club on that regard, not Andy Kim, but let's welcome them all to the stage.
I feel like we're going to our death or something.
I think I'm at the end, correct? I'm at the end. Hello, Lou. How you doing, brother? My God, what are we sitting in here?
All right, so how's everybody doing? Yeah, it is it's quite soft. You might So I just wanted to ask first off, you know, obviously there's a huge amount of political noise out there, and some stuff is interspersed, you know, the national agenda with state politics. I was in Trenton yesterday. There was a huge pro-life rally going on in the streets of Trenton. What are you hearing from your constituents? What are they concerned about? Is there a lot of intersectionality between the federal agenda that we're hearing the presidential candidates talk about, the Senate candidates and House candidates, and what you're doing in the day-to-day? Carol, why don't we start with you?
Okay, yeah, so, you know, first of all, thank you, Marlene, and thank all of you for including me today. It is an honor to be here again. You know what we're seeing, the topics are the same, but I think the positions are a little bit different because we as a state, we tend to get more in the weeds on things that we need to do here. And if we were to take this in perspective of South Jersey, one of the things I can tell you, our infrastructure, as a chairwoman of my local MUA, I can tell you we're starting to see more and more infrastructure issues, not only on the waterfront line, but also our traffic, our transportation, and things of that nature. So I think as we are concentrating on certain aspects, especially here in South Jersey, you know, on the federal side, from what I can tell, it's encompassing of the entire state, right? Which the entire state has the same issues we do. We're just focused a little bit more on New Jersey. And I think that's where we see the difference in between the federal and the state. And I also know that, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we are focused on the same thing. It's just how we get there is what the difference is.
John, how about you? What are you seeing in your offices?
I think people are just exhausted from this
presidential race, it seems to have gone on for 3.5 years. I'm a Democrat. I don't consider Donald Trump to be a Republican. He has his own brand. He's hard to stop watching. It's because he's just so entertaining. The presidential race, and I don't mean entertaining in a good way, entertaining in a car crash way, but the presidential race has sucked all the oxygen out of the room at all levels. In Gloucester County, where we have commissioner seats up this year, to get people's attention to the local side is very, very difficult. Carol summed up from what we try to do at the State House, but there's no cutting through at the moment. The next 4 weeks are critical. This event's being sponsored by one of the wind developers. If Trump is elected, the wind industry goes away for 4 years. These are a couple of things that are at stake, but this is all lost in the larger presidential discussion here. And America is just, I think there's fatigue. I think there's great curiosity. And, we hold our breath waiting to see what he says next because it's pure entertainment, but that's a dangerous combination when it comes to running this nation. So until this is done, it's hard to get focused on anything else.
Yeah.
Brigid, thank you. First of all, I'm very honored to be here. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I think I've done 26 of these. So it's a great organization, and it's a great group, and I love that they pull everybody together. And for the people that are here, I do think it's important that you know that this was intended to be a bipartisan panel. And, our colleagues chose not to come, as John pointed out. I think it's very important for you to know, because this was sponsored by a renewable, energy efficient, alternative source of energy to try to help fight climate change. And they chose to not be here today. And I think that's a mistake. And I think it kind of leads in, Brigid, to your question, which is the fatigue around these issues. And I don't know if Curtis is still in the room. I think I saw him over at the table, but I would just say, for me, Curtis is a friend, and he is someone who I've enjoyed over my career working with. He is a very talented business owner. He is a person of great honor and distinction. I've worked with him on the issue of tourism in South Jersey, the hotel industry, revising casino industries. He has always been thoughtful, and I applaud him for running for office. Now I'll be voting for Andy Kim, but I'll be voting for Andy Kim primarily because of the issues that John references at the top of the ticket and the concerns that we have seen with one party that has just gone in lockstep and unable to have an honest conversation around real issues like wind energy, like women's health. When you hear, I used to say to people all the time, and it was funny at the time, it was a cute little line of, I can't wait to go home and watch my favorite reality TV show. But when you start to hear propaganda like they're eating our dogs, they're eating our cats. Well, Mr. President, where did you get that? Well, I saw it on TV. That's not what we need. And when you hear conversations around, in spite of the science, that wind energy is hurting our ocean life, and that this is going to look like it is 3 feet off your shore, you can't have an honest conversation where facts should be dictating this, where people can make an honest conversation, where through that process you have seen companies move wind further offshore. And as someone who is a homeowner in Ocean City, and it was a dream for my family to have that, trust me, I want to protect this industry, this tourism, those beaches as much as anybody. This is part of my childhood, is part of my memory, it's become part of my children's memories. I am unabashedly New Jersey's greatest cheerleader. I love this state. I think it's the greatest state in the country. As far as I'm concerned, 1 million Canadian geese can't be wrong. We're in the greatest place that you could possibly be. But I'll just finish with, these are real issues. And when someone says that children are being murdered and called abortion after birth, that's a lie. But if you've known someone who you love, as I do, who had a pregnancy that they valued and cherished, and that the baby was not viable in the 7th or 8th month of that pregnancy, and that pregnancy needed to be terminated, that miscarriage is, in a medical term, called an abortion. That is not the killing of life. That is a humane healthcare decision done for a woman with her partner, their doctor, and if they choose, their spiritual advisor. And to denigrate that and to diminish that and to ignore the emotion that a family or an individual goes through is wrong. And that is, in spite of the fact that we're at the state level and this is a constitutional right, that is a driving force in state politics today, as is things like wind energy and climate change, as is the economy and jobs, as is other things that I hope we will talk about today, where you see an economy that is thriving in this country right now and we are still coming out of the remnants of a pandemic, but drives issues like housing, the reduction in inflation, the lowering of interest rates, all of which have dramatic impacts on New Jersey, our economy, and the next evolution of where this state goes.
I want to get to those policy issues, but I want to follow up with one political question, because you come from very distinct districts, and I'm wondering if the kind of vitriolic rhetoric that we've seen on the national level, whether we're talking about the things that aren't facts being put out there as propaganda, or just kind of the anger. Are you seeing that in your legislative offices? Is your staff experiencing that? Are you seeing it when you're going, I don't know if you're going door to door, but in community events, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, one of the things that I think New Jersey should be very proud of is the line that we have walked on protecting the Second Amendment, and at the same time doing very comprehensive gun violence prevention acts like red flag laws, which is one of the few that Congress has been able to do in a bipartisan fashion. But you are seeing upticks in violence with the Supreme Court's decision to change and allow a state like New Jersey, in spite of what the voters in New Jersey have overwhelmingly supported, not just constitutionally, but by elected officials who have supported common sense gun violence prevention that has protected the Second Amendment. At the same time, you are seeing very, I don't want to use the word violent, I don't want to overhype this, but agitated, angry, more than protests. I'm a pro-choice candidate. I think the protest yesterday I think it's great. That's our America at work. That's our democracy at work. That's people voicing in a peaceful way their point of view. But yes, the temperature is up, and I think people that underestimate President Trump do so at their own peril. He is a master at communicating to the public that he wants to communicate with. And he has figured out that he doesn't need everybody to love him. He needs an X percentage to win an electoral college. And I think you need to take what he says very seriously. I don't think that he has, as something that I cherish in elected office and that I've tried to do in my career, is the words you say matter. Mm-hmm. Your argument should stand, maybe it's my training as a lawyer, I believe evidence should drive outcomes, and that you ought to be able to make your case to the public. And you ought to be able to stand on what you believe in and communicate that in a thoughtful, passionate way, but a factual way and an honest way. And let the argument win out. And there can be two truths. And people will decide where they want to be. But it shouldn't be done under this masterful scheme of, if I can say something 3 times and get you to repeat it, then it becomes truth. Right. That's not truth.
Let's change gears a little bit and talk about the budget. And in your view, how does the state budget address the unique challenges that South Jersey faces? What's in it for us? John, do you want to start?
Well, that question comes up frequently and during the budget season. This year's budget was, what, $56 billion, thereabouts, give or take. And it's always a tug of war regionally. And it requires focus to know what we want. And just, Lou just spoke beautifully to the tone that's out there. And you, Brigid, you raised the question correctly. And I use this as an example of what a distracted people we are, because we're tuned into this reality TV show. We should be having a real detailed discussion on where we're going on our energy policies in New Jersey, because it affects us. And in the southern part of the state, I always don't like to use the term South, because South conjures up something else for me, considering the Confederate States and how they're conducting themselves in this time. We need to be focused, and we're not focused, or it's hard to get people focused on these bigger issues. This wind industry thing is a real discussion. We're going to lose time here. It's not going to get cheaper to build. And to think that we would ignore the gift that the good Lord has given us of wind and harnessing it to be able to develop electricity. The debate should continue about the rates. It should continue about infrastructure, how it's placed, how it works. But there's no question that this is there and it's ready for us to use. And we have to recognize that there has to be additional investment in nuclear. But we don't get a chance to talk about that. We're distracted people. And by the way, it's football season. So it's really hard to get people's attention.
And if you're from South Jersey, it's baseball season.
And it's baseball season, so we prepare for that next round of heartbreak. Because that's,
Not if you're from South Jersey and your name is Muller or Murphy, however, because they are Mets fans. Would you also talk a little bit about the budget and what it means for small businesses in South Jersey?
Yeah, so one of the things that we discovered out of COVID, first of all, as a person who is pro-business and someone who wants to protect my small businesses, I come from a town that has a little section of where we tried to build up with small businesses and the mom and pop shops, because that's what our community wants. Our community wants those small businesses that they can walk to. They want those small businesses that they can rely on and not so much pay attention to the big conglomerates that are out there. In the budget, we really did try to concentrate on the fact that these big businesses pay fair shares, especially for the little person, right? But one of the things that I truly believe is that if we don't have our businesses, we don't have our communities. And if we don't have our communities, we're not going to have our businesses. So we need to start making sure that all of our businesses are taken care of and have the right tone and the resources they need to be successful, while making sure that our families are able to stay in the communities and continue working, continue shopping, continue sending their kids to school. And that's a challenge in today's world. Because what we're seeing, and it all goes back to the temperature that we're seeing, is people will tend to, when we talk about rhetoric and we're talking about the things that are happening, people don't want to listen, they just want to react. And the first thing I always say is that you got to argue with passion and not with anger, right? Because if you're passionate about something, you're going to get a long way further than you will if you argue with anger. And as a woman legislator, I can tell you, even sometimes our passion is misinterpreted for anger, right? And my small businesses, and I call them my small businesses because I take pride, and when I'm on that seat, sitting there, listening to testimony, working on the budget, working in caucus with many of our members, and used to work with John Burzichelli when he was in the Assembly on the budget, and I know you're on the Senate side as well. One of the things that we're talking about is how does it impact South Jersey? What do we need to do here in South Jersey to make sure we get our fair share? Because we're not seeing hardly anything come down here without a fight, without a constant reminder that, hey, we exist down here. We don't have all the money. It's very rare, that we're getting the trains and the transportation and the money to put out there for our businesses. And that's what the shame of it is that we as South Jersey here are constantly fighting for what we need to make sure we get our fair share, not only in the budget, but also in other avenues through the legislature.
Thank you.
So I think South Jersey should be very proud. I think South Jersey is the growth region of the state. I'm very proud to say that I think this team and our colleagues that are in the audience here today are a big part of that. When I first got elected to office, South Jersey did not receive its fair share. And, we kind of got elected in a mindset of region first policy based on sound evidence and principles, but that we were going to fight for South Jersey. And I think we've shown over our careers that we've been able to articulate the core principles of our party and do so in a way that makes sure that South Jersey is not forgotten in that. And it's dangerous to do this, but I have friends in the audience who I'm indebted to that are part of what we've done. So, I govern through what I call life experience. And my oldest daughter, who I was communicating with on the way down here, just got her first paycheck at her first job at Brown & Connery as a young lawyer, and she was staggered at how much money she's making and did comment that taxes did get taken out. So, but it's good to know that we all feel the same pressures and the same things. But, my daughter Lauren at the age of 12 was diagnosed with epilepsy out of nowhere, came out of nowhere. And it was a challenge to get her to identify the seizures, get them under control, young woman growing into a beautiful woman today. And we have world-class healthcare insurance, and we could go anywhere we want. And Lauren at one point had started over the bridge in Philadelphia, because that's where, after she came out as a pediatric patient into adult. But we found in South Jersey this remarkable place at AtlantiCare, where they treated her as an individual, not as a number. They cared for her in a remarkable way, and she could go anywhere she wants. But she's here in South Jersey at AtlantiCare. And one of the things, I tell you that life story because one of the things that we have battled in government is how do we stop those patients from getting on the Atlantic City Expressway and driving straight down over the bridges and passing phenomenal health care at AtlantiCare, at Inspira, at Virtua, at Cooper, and keep those patients here. And when you look at what's happening at AtlantiCare with the partnerships with the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, around neurology that impacts my daughter and our family and the advancements that is taking place there, that is a public-private partnership that we are thriving in, and they are a part of our South Jersey budget that we now fight for because of the experiences they have. The expansion at Rowan and the first veterinary school in New Jersey to stop patients that are leaving. The impact on science and clinical trials that are taking place because of our investment with the Cancer Institute that serves all 21 counties in the state and their partnership with MD Anderson. Medical schools. When we launched the medical school, the Cooper Medical School at Rowan, we had colleagues from North Jersey who literally said to us, why do you need a medical school? You can go over the bridge to Philadelphia. Why in a state where our largest employer are healthcare providers and we have the finest education system in the country, would we ever send a child? Why would we ever say to any region of the state, we can go over the bridge? The investment that we've made in Stockton down here. When you get a chance and you leave here today, just drive down the street and look at that campus at Stockton and what they're doing. 9,000 applications a year. They have to turn quality students away. What is happening in South Jersey is remarkable. Now, it will never be finished. That's why government exists. So where we're focused next, you're going to see major investments in public transportation, combining off of the Biden Infrastructure Act and what we're doing here in New Jersey, what we worked on the Transportation Trust Fund to take roads and bridges in this state that were failing and collapsing, and not just here but around the country, but New Jersey needed this injection. That Transportation Trust Fund is working. The investment in public transit. And I'll just close with this. We fought because the corporate business tax we felt was unfair, because while public transportation is a critical infrastructure component to attracting businesses to our state and to our region, South Jersey, we know, does not have the strongest public transportation. And one of the examples from another friend of mine at Inspira was the closest NJ transit stop to for Inspira's hospital, an emergency room in Vineland, was a 30-minute walk. Now, my wife was pregnant with twins, so in the 7th month, if you had to walk 30 minutes, or the 8th month or the 9th month, you're not going, right? So we have been, and we are very blessed, Governor Murphy has been focused on South Jersey, partnering with us in our investment. And whether it happens or not, we should be very proud and excited that an entity like Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment and the Philadelphia 76ers are in serious conversations to moving their stadium to Camden. They already have, some of you may not know, their practice facilities, their corporate offices are already in Camden. And it's not the everybody gets lost in the excitement of the sports team, and as a fan, I do too. But what is exciting about that opportunity is not the 41 dates that the Sixers would play, but it's the commitment that the state of New Jersey is making to them in high-speed line, further connection of the light rail line, a ferry system back and forth from Pennsylvania to Camden in New Jersey, because for 365 days out of the year, our residents would use that transportation. We've been in dire need of that transportation. We are in desperate need of that transportation. And South Jersey residents spend 27% of their disposable income on transportation, and the national average is 15%.
Wow. I want to circle back to infrastructure and transportation in a moment, but you mentioned some of the educational development, particularly with Stockton. I did see Dr. Teresita Sass, who's Executive Vice President of Stockton, in the room. And I wanted to ask all of you about the commitment of the state to equity, both in higher education, whether we're talking about comparisons in funding between Stockton, for example, and other state colleges and universities, when we're talking about a per pupil expense, or in K-12 funding. In K-12 funding in South Jersey, we tend to not get as much funding as many of the districts in North Jersey. What are legislators, both Republican and Democrat, from South Jersey doing to kind of equalize funding for education?
Well, Brigid, that's a very layered question, because the school funding formula in public education has been evolving and morphing, and going back to the Abbott decision, creating those districts to where we are today. Additional, $900 million, Lou, Carol, in the budgets this year for public education. And frankly, you can't give our schools enough money. If you give them another $100 million, they'll ask for an additional $100 million on top of it. You just can't seem to get them enough money. So New Jersey's public school funding formula is supposed to now follow the child. So wherever that child is, adequate money is supposed to follow the child. How close are we to it? The governor will tell you it's fully funded. Some school districts will tell you it's not an adequacy, which is the term that is used. All I can tell you is you can't seem to find enough money for our public schools. We try. People talk about how wonderful our schools are, and they are, but we have weak spots. So the commitment to public education remains. And we spend a great deal of money there. I mean, I think the state budget alone this year was probably around $13 billion plus in public education, matched by property tax, probably putting it at $25, $26 billion a year. Now think of that on a 52-week year, and schools aren't open 52 weeks, but that's what New Jersey people pay for public education in K-12. So no one's walking away from the commitment. It's constitutionally required, and it just costs a lot of money. So
one of the things I think that we've done that I think is intelligent, I think people do it in the business world, we've brought it to government. Some of the problems seem so large that they become insurmountable, and I think people that are not serious about public policy walk away and do more simplistic pieces, that will make May Butterfly Month. Like, that's fun, and I know butterflies are important, but I think funding the pension and education is critically important. And what we did in the pension was we set out and said we had, under both Republican and Democratic administrations, the pension had not been funded properly. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. It dramatically impacted local property taxpayers and our education system. And we set out a 7-year plan to fully fund the pension. And people said you'd never get there. We now have made 3 consecutive payments into the pension of over $7 billion a year out of the $56 billion budget. And we are committed as the Democratic Party to fully fund that pension and never retreat. And I will tell you, I think it has been so effective and so powerful, and has helped us with our credit rating, that helps us with borrowing, that helps us with infrastructure, and business people get that I don't think any administration, Republican or Democrat, would retreat. So we did the same thing on education funding. And I would say, Brigid, in all honesty, I think we've crossed the Rubicon now because we set out a multi-year plan to fully fund public education in New Jersey. And we have leveled off, because of the fair share funding system, what school districts throughout the state should get. And it's a formula, and the formula doesn't always work to your advantage, because if your community is growing and wealth grows, you could get less. And that's what we saw in the final year of this formula. So I think the bigger problem with education statewide in New Jersey, and we should know, #1 public education system in the country 3 years in a row. That's what you have in New Jersey. That's the opportunity that you have for your children and grandchildren. #1 public education system in the country. The problem is, I still think fundamentally our structure is broken. So we have 608 school districts and 567 municipalities. I know that's hard to comprehend, but you have more school districts than you do communities. And the problem in that system is there were 140 losers, which meant there were 468 winners. So trying to take, here's a shocking statistic, none of the winners wanted to take any of their money and give it to any of the losers. So and everybody loved the formula when everybody was getting more. I still think fundamentally, I think the future of education in New Jersey, which I've been talking to this group about literally for 30 years, is that New Jersey's funding system is broken, in that we're the only state in the country that solely relies on local property taxes to fund local government. And it doesn't allow for the variances of the economy. It doesn't allow for an economic tsunami of 2008. It doesn't allow for a recession. It doesn't, after the financial markets, it doesn't allow for a pandemic. Property taxes are blinded to that. So they just keep going up, and the local school districts are afraid to take the 2% more, because take it or lose it. If you don't take it, it's gone forever. So it's a fundamentally broken problem that really needs people to roll up their sleeves and look at best practices of other states to fund education without sacrificing the dollar, and most importantly, not sacrificing that #1 school rating. And that's the next great challenge that I would like to take on, but I think that's the future of this.
That's a great response, Lou. Thank you. Carol.
So, you know what, education, let's talk a little bit about the higher education as well. Last year, I fought very hard for my friends at Stockton to get additional monies in the budget, very successful there. RCBC, fight very hard for Rutgers, Rowan, et cetera. One of the things that we did in the budget this year, and I'm going to put a plug in for this, and last year we did the summer tag, because we realized as a state the necessity of having kids be able, and students be able to continue their schooling through the summer, because a lot of them will stop and not come back because they're still paying off whatever they have because they can't get loans. So I think that's also very relative to this. And to talk about our grade schools and our high schools and our public education, you're absolutely right. It's #1. I sit on a couple national boards, and I talk to other legislators from around the countries. And some of the things I hear that they're doing is something we've already done. And I'm sitting there saying, well, we did that. And it might not have come out. Or like in Vermont, they use all of their property taxes go towards transportation because their kids don't have transportation because only certain schools are able to. So when I look at education here, I'm very grateful at the fact that, yeah, there is some issues with funding because it has to do with our students' enrollment, right? That's what people are understanding, that if a school enrollment goes down, and like, you know, the senator said, is that it follows the child, that means that their funding is going to go down. And if there's a higher enrollment somewhere, that means their funding is just going to go up. And I think even in my district, you know, we have regional schools that aren't understanding the fact that their population drive is going down. And as we start looking into our future, what is it going to be like with families who maybe only have less kids because of affordability? So as a budget and a state, first of all, we all should be extremely proud of the fact that we are the #1 in education, our public system. But more importantly, our higher education as well. We have some really good schools here, and economically, we have to make sure our kids and our families are able to stay here, because they may go to school out of state and they choose to stay out of state. And that's a problem we face
it's
here
a
in New
huge
Jersey.
problem. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. That migration of our college students. All of you have mentioned infrastructure. I mean, I work primarily in North Jersey, and when I look at a New Jersey transit map, it looks like the state kind of ends right around the middle of the state if you look at the rail map. When we look at Atlantic City, for example, that could deeply benefit from improved infrastructure, getting visitors down to Atlantic City, what in this budget is in for South Jersey in terms of both infrastructure and transportation monies?
Well,
So this was a good transportation budget, right?
Well, New Jersey Transit likes the idea of having more money.
Yep.
The additional $900 million that I think was generated by the corporate business tax hasn't even reached them this year. We're struggling in Gloucester County to get the light rail line built from Camden to Glassboro because we have people that are resistant to it, even though it's going to go on existing tracks. And as I reminded people through the budget discussion, that moving people is not profitable. New Jersey Transit, if they have one line that pays its way, I'm not sure they do, by the way. I mean, they may have one hidden somewhere, but from a public policy standpoint, we underwrite public transportation. And if you could make money moving people, Pennsylvania Railroad would still be in business. Moving people does not make money. So we have to decide from a state standpoint, is this where we want to be? Now, I asked this group here, how many people took the train to Atlantic City to get here? And I would think the number would be very low if any took it at all. So our habits are automobile-based here. And so the first focus is making the roads better. The missing moves interchange up at 5542, very important. All federal money in large part. Had to go back and rebuild the wall that collapsed. So Brigid, it's very complicated because we have to marry people's habits and how they move. Will they leave their car? Lou talked about the potential arena in Camden and what that means. And even if that arena goes in Center City, Philadelphia, it's going to require people moving in a different way. Hard to change people's habits. And as Carol talked about small business, we're all interested in small business. But I also remind people, businesses don't close because they're making too much money. So there are trends, there are retail trends, there are transportation trends. So trying to stay in front of this is tricky. Atlantic City is so very important to all of us with regards to what the casino industry throws off to fund other programs. Getting people here is critical. We did have a train called the ACE, proved not to be successful, coming out of Manhattan, moving down during the height of the summer season because the infrastructure for railroad didn't accommodate it, too many transfers, various things. This is not uncomplicated stuff. So we have to decide from a public policy standpoint, are we going to continue to underwrite public transportation? And how are we going to do that? It should have come from a broad-based tax, get off of the corporate business tax, and how are we going to fund it? So, and how do people want to move around?
And just, again, politics and words matter, right? So, money goes where people are advocating and want it. So we're advocates for the public transportation. But when you see propaganda around a light rail line from Camden to Gloucester that people fight against and have run political campaigns against because those people are going to get on that light rail line and come to our communities and rob our homes and steal our goods. And I kind of think, I don't know the criminal mastermind that's getting on the light rail line to go steal some TV and get back on. I don't think that's really what's going to happen. But when John makes a very interesting point. That infrastructure is not designed to be profitable. It is designed to attract businesses, and you have to look beyond its initial investment and look at the ripple effect, the multiplier effect of the investment in those public transportations. But if every time you're advocating and championing infrastructure, light rail, oh, we don't want that, it's going to bring the wrong element. Wind energy, alternative energy, we have climate change. Water levels are rising in this area and land mass is being lost. Oh, we don't want that. You're going to see it from the beach line. Well, are you really going to see it? And how much of it are you going to see? And how many days are you going to see it? And how long are you going to see it? None of that really matters. It's killing the whales. If you push back on stuff enough, there are other people that want it. And if you're a business and you're doing public-private partnerships in this, and the business says, well, I can go over here where they're welcoming me, that's where they're going to go. And at the end of the day, you have to be willing to make the investment. And infrastructure is not sexy because, to me, I relate it to putting a new roof on your home. It's not as fun as, doing a new kitchen, right? Or a man cave where you see it and you enjoy it. And the roof is on you don't ever see it, but you're appreciative that water's not coming in the house. And that's kind of what infrastructure is.
I mean, I also would argue that infrastructure is part of economic development. It isn't just about getting tourists to Atlantic City. It's about property values and allowing people to take advantage of a relatively affordable community and get to work in other locations.
Brigid, some of the most valuable real estate is along train stations,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Along rail lines,
exactly.
Haddonfield, Collingswood,
because people can get to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Brigid, if I have 30 seconds, I'd like to add this on the wind stuff because it's a fascinating story. Because we have a number of friends of mine, they're avid fishermen. They're very upset about the wind industry because the windmills are going to kill the marine life. So my comment to them is, what do you do when you fish? I mean, what's happening? What's happening to the fish you're pulling out of the ocean? Well, exactly. So we don't want the windmills. So you can go kill the fish at a slower pace than they're suggesting this is happening. But the point is, we have to push back on this.
I would like to disassociate. I
would
like to disassociate any comments from Senator Burzichelli.
But Lou sums it up. It's the constant pushback, and you have to work through these things. You have to work through the no's, and you have to win the argument on merit as time passes. So, as I said to my friend, you'll still fish. Yeah.
So I think we all have the point here that the senator is anti-fish. Is that what we're saying?
He's very funny.
While I have you talking about your constituents, can you talk a little bit about part of infrastructure is broadband, right? Incredibly important. We saw that during COVID. Where it literally meant the difference in housing values because people could work from home or they couldn't. And of course, people that can work from home, and it has changed our economy and how we do business. Property values are higher in areas where there's reliable broadband internet access. I know in part of your district, there remains a struggle to get high-speed broadband access. What is the South Jersey delegation doing in that regard?
I'm going to defer to Carol because she's been a leader in a good part of this. And the answer is we have a tug of war. I've used that term a couple times. And one of our, between Salem County and Cumberland County, about the county making an investment in the system. Carol, you want to pick that up? Because you were a leader on this piece.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. First of all, I sat in on the White House's last year or 2 years ago on their conference with one of the groups that I sit on about broadband when the president was adding the extra money through the broadband initiative that he was doing. You're absolutely right. COVID, once again, brought something to highlight that we were obviously missing, is that there are a lot of areas that are not equipped for broadband. Kids could not. In my district alone, there was a school, my Lenape School District actually, shut down for a few days because it was just overloaded with people trying to get online, right? But one thing, where's Tony at? Tony, close your ears, please, my friend. There's also small wireless cells also that is extremely important. Because as we talk about broadband, so let me give you an example. Broadband is something you see that you put in the streets most of the time or under the ground so it works efficiently. And it's good, right? I mean, there's no question we need it. We need to have it. But also wireless cells in places that cannot be reached through the ground. Perfect example. A friend of mine who is the speaker in West Virginia, they did wireless cells all throughout West Virginia because they couldn't go in ground, because there was no way they would be able to get broadband. But we have to remember that as we start moving forward, and my 5G bill that we started out being a leader on ended up being behind because, of all the lag time that we had. The more we wait on getting up to speed, and if we're going to talk about smart cities, people, we need to make sure we talk about infrastructure, our broadband, our internet, all of that needs to be brought up to speed. Because by the time we get up to 5G, we're going to be seeing people up to 10G. We're going to see people up to that, and people are going to be faster. And when we talk about our businesses, if our businesses cannot get online because they want to go down in one of our areas, like in Cumberland County or Salem County or up north in Sussex County, where there's rural areas and broadband and all of that is not readily accessible, not only to our students, but also our businesses, we're not going to be successful.
Right.
And we have to assure that between now and the end of time, we have so many issues. And if I had a magic wand, infrastructure, whether it's our roads, whether it's our water, whether it's our broadband, whether it's our communications, that would all be waved into working successfully, right? But broadband is an issue that I think that we have to do more focus on. And putting a plug in for Tony over there, I could tell you working with Comcast as well, not only on the broadband, but on the streaming part and on the wireless cell has been great because they encompass a lot of area for us. They encompass not only with our phone companies, but with our broadband, with our DirecTVs, with our streaming, and the ability for kids to get online. Because remember this, my friends, that whether you have grandkids, young kids, older kids, they're going to go to grandma's house somewhere, and grandma's not going to have broadband, and they're not going to be able to use their phone. And what's going to happen? They're not going to be able to do their homework. They're not going to be able to watch TV. They're not going to be able to play their games. I'm a big person who plays my games. You're not going to be able to do that, and we're still seeing that, especially as we go in various parts. And picking up when I go to sport games, especially Devils game or something of that nature, I can't get real information because there is a block on it. And we have to assure that our future, not only when we talk about wind and solar and climate change, but also includes our infrastructure for our broadband.
And Carol, you bring up a point that I think is really important and interesting. When we think about the South Jersey economy, we're heavily reliant on seasonal employment, on travel and tourism. How does this budget, besides our discussion of infrastructure, how does this budget attempt to support the diversification of economic growth in our region? Lou?
Well, we just put tens of millions of dollars into, I know it sounds, kind of fun, but, the Boardwalk Infrastructure Act is critically important. And you look at the businesses up and down the boardwalk that rely on this, it's critically important. But when you look at the tourism, when you look at communities, like Ocean City, where my family goes, that's maybe a community of 15,000 people that swells to over a couple 100,000 people every week for 5 months out of the year. This is a major component, not just for this region of the state, but the overall economy. It's a 40 billion plus economy a year for the state of New Jersey and the revenues that it produces. But there are components that have to also make all those others successful. So one of the things that we advocated for that's in the budget is the child care tax credit to allow families, and many families are dual income households that have to go to work. And so it's combining those senses of local needs with overall public policy that come together to create the opportunity. But again, all the investments in the main components of South Jersey's economy, the EDS and MEDS corridor is a critical asset. And when you see the investments that have gone directly into those entities, it not only feeds those existing entities, but again, what we call that multiplier effect to all the jobs that surround it, the employment around it. You're seeing a debate, it's a very hard debate for us, around smoking cessation in these casinos, okay? It's an easy argument to say, smoking's not healthy for you. It's not hard to figure it out, it's not healthy for you. But there is a component, when I say to you there can be two truths, there is a component that if New Jersey independently acts and eliminates smoking as it is controlled currently in the casinos, the last bastion of smoking in public places in New Jersey, and we don't act intelligently in how we do that, 3,500 of our employees in this city will lose their job. And not only will they lose their job, they will lose their health insurance. And that will impact that education corridor and the medical corridor that is so important. And health insurance, when you have a child that's sick, let me tell you something, health insurance really matters. And when you need a seizure control medication, and it is very expensive, health insurance really matters. So it's easy to stand up and pound your fist and say, we're going to eliminate smoking and it's not safe. and then someone else worry about those 3,500 jobs and their families and their health insurance. So we're trying to work in a bipartisan fashion to bring industry and the unions together to find a way to have smoking rooms where no workers go in, filtration like they have in the hospitals, build that, and then work in conjunction with those union leaders to go to Pennsylvania and our friend Governor Shapiro and say, let's do this together and let's end this. And that creates a level playing field and protects these jobs.
Right.
And if I may, Lou, piggybacking onto that, we've made a major infrastructure investment in the wind industry for South Jersey to be a leader, a national leader. And that's why when you have this debates and this pause and these terms, it's particularly painful. The wind logistic port being built in Lower Allorace Creek that marries on to the nuclear plants, that's a major state investment funded by bonding from the EDA. The Port of Paulsboro, home to the monopile facility, which would be the only monopile facility in the Northeast, likely on the East Coast, presently stalled, waiting for some of these things to get worked out. We have this opportunity right now to be a leader in this area, lots of jobs, good paying jobs, and we're suddenly paused. And there are reasons. I mean, there's economy, there's interest rates, there's various things. But we have to collectively work through this to bring this industry to fruition, to deliver on the promise that we believe it can deliver. And we got to be very careful in this argument not to kill this thing before the baby has a chance to breathe, for lack of a better term. So you ask about the economy commitments. They're all state monies. Port of Paulsboro is probably worth $500 million. That's up and running. Monopile facility partially sited. Ports operating. Logistic port facility in Lower Allorace Creek under construction. So this wind industry is very, very important to this region.
Thank you. So I just want to wrap up asking you to look a little bit into the future. One of the most significant political developments that occurred in the past year was the elimination of, calling into question, the constitutionality of the party line. It's going to impact your own elections moving forward. It's going to impact the 2025 gubernatorial race. Can you give us some kind of predictions of how this is going to play out, both in the legislative elections and in the gubernatorial election?
So we are working on legislation right now to try to, I think one important fact, the court never rendered a decision, right. The case was pulled. So factually, we could continue the way we always have. Myself and my colleagues in legislative leadership think that we should get a clarifying piece of legislation and make the law. It is our responsibility to make the law. The courts can then interpret the law. So we are working on legislation that we think, again, is mirrored off of some of the best practices of other states, that will take away what has been traditionally the line, but at the same time acknowledge candidates who choose to run together. There is a right to organize. And I believe there is a right to assemble with people that you have shared values in. And I think there is an interest in the public knowing that. And so we are interested in looking at, while eliminating the lines, creating bracketing for candidates, identifying yourself as part of an organization and a party that you choose to be a part of. We are known passionately as being fiscally responsible, moderate Democrats that are aggressive about pushing social values, but done so in a way, progressive models. We've marriage equality, right to choose, needle exchange, legalizing cannabis, but do so in a way that has a return on investment and builds programs. So there is a concept to the way we govern that we want to assemble with people that share our values. And so we're looking at all of those. And
do you think that that will be operational before the primaries?
Yes.
And Brigid, a reminder to everyone, primary elections are a function of political parties. They don't elect people to office, they don't seat people in office. It is a function of a political party that uses to select the candidates it's going to put forward in a general election for consideration to be elected to office. And we're sort of out of whack here. I think the court decision was wrong. As Lou says, legislature will step in. And of course, we are bodies of great wisdom. So I'm certain we're just going to, it'll be perfect when we finish.
But if it inspires more people to get involved, it's good.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Wonderful responses. Appreciate you taking the time.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see so many familiar faces here, and for those who I haven't met, my name is Ben Gallinelli. I'm the Vice President of the Southern New Jersey Development Council, and I have the honor of introducing our final panel of the day, a feisty point-counterpoint debate, and our panel's moderator. So, with that, Dr. Benjamin Dworkin serves as the founder and director of the Institute for Public Policy and Citizenship at Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey. He's appeared on numerous network cable news shows, is frequently quoted in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the Chicago Tribune, and Los Angeles Times. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Benjamin Dworkin.
Thanks. Okay, thank you, Ben. Good morning, everybody. All right, I got to hear more than besides this one table. Good morning. All right, we're all still here. Not everybody's left. We're going to do this. It is an honor to be back. Guys, why don't you come on up? It's an honor to be back with the Development Council again. I want to thank them for inviting me in a room filled with those who make a real difference in the economy of this region. So, anything interesting happen in politics recently? Anybody? No? Because, yeah, we've been through a lot. And we still have 5 weeks to go before Election Day, though I should note we don't really have an Election Day anymore. We have an election season. Early ballots go out now this week, right? Here in New Jersey, other places are already casting ballots. And with us to explain some of the dynamics and things that are going on, we have two of our state's best campaign strategists. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the Republican side, Michael DuHaime.
Thank you.
And from the Democratic side, Mike Muller. The two mics, I'll be referring to you by your last name so we can keep this going.
Thank you, brother.
All right, let's just get right to it. Mike DuHaime, you are president of MAD Global Strategy Group, which offers public affairs consulting services to all kinds of corporate clients. You've also been a strategist and operative for the presidential campaigns of George W. Bush, John McCain, Rudy Giuliani, as well as Chris Christie, for whom you worked when he was running for both governor and for president. So unlike the situation a few months ago, it is now a Harris versus Trump race. We know it's a tight race. But from your perspective, Mike DuHaime, what more can you tell us about where things stand with the presidential contest overall, besides that it's tied? How is your party's nominee doing?
Well, it's really come down to a smaller and smaller number of target states. You mentioned George W. Bush. I remember when we started that race, we started with somewhere around 18 target states, and by the end there were about like 15 states in play. This year you're talking about maybe 7 that are truly the battleground states as we've gotten more polarized as a country. In terms of President Trump, he's in basically the same place he's been in for 8 or 9 years. He has a very high floor and a very low ceiling. You already know what you think of President Trump. You don't need a TV ad or a debate to tell you what you think of him. Vice President Harris is more of a kind of an open question, and that's why you saw President Trump, when Biden was in the race, he was winning. I think it was a Wisconsin poll where he was beating Biden by like 6, and then the next Wisconsin poll when Harris was in, he was losing to Harris by like 3. But Trump actually went up by 2 points in that poll. What happened was a lot of people went away from Biden. They didn't go to Trump. They just kind of went to the undecided camp, and then when there was another option, Harris, they went back to kind of where they were comfortable with the Democratic Party. So it's there's nothing new to anybody, very close. I think, listen, I don't think Trump's a great candidate, right? He's not my cup of tea. That's no surprise to anybody who's ever seen me talk or read anything I've written. But like he appeals to a certain number of voters. His economic message, his kind of populist message appeals, and I think people underestimate him at their own peril. You can ask Hillary Clinton what it's like when you underestimate somebody like that. He is super charismatic, and he's, I think we can't discount, the big part of the country that wants to vote for him. And in places like Wisconsin, it's about half the state. In Pennsylvania, it's about half the state. And it's going to be this close. And the same with Michigan and other states that went for him in 2016 and did not go for him in 2020. Turnout will be a little bit different this time because 4 years ago, everybody was mailed a ballot, so we had record turnout on both sides. Part of that is the excitement of the election, but part of that was the convenience with which people were allowed to vote. And so I think it's going to be a little bit lower turnout, so that type of enthusiasm is going to matter on both sides now, and I see a lot of enthusiasm on both sides.
Okay, so Mike Muller, you've worked for Hillary Clinton, you've worked for Mike Bloomberg and others, and after launching and leading the New Jersey Democratic Legislative Campaign Organization for over a decade and helping Trenton Democrats take and expand their grip on the state, you now head up Muller Public Strategies. You're involved with races for the legislature and Congress and along with ballot initiatives across the country. So, Mike Muller, what's your take on the presidential race? Aside from the fact that it's tied. I mean, is everything what Mike DuHaime basically the same? And how do you think Kamala Harris is doing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of agreement about where we're at, because this is literally, to say it's a tie race, is like the most simplistic thing that we can talk about. It's clearly tie. What's really interesting about it is that the undecideds are so small. When we really come down to this, when we start thinking about turnout, what are the trends that we're going to see? Because 4 years ago, it was easy. Use our New Jersey example. You're mail to ballot. Everybody was basically in a turnout mode. We were pushing to get all those ballots returned. I think at this stage of the race, that's probably the biggest boom for Democrats, and I will say the Taylor Swift effect was this moment where we saw this big jump in registration in some of the states that really matter. Now, we've often seen the jump in registration is great. You got to actually have them show up during the course of this final month of the race into November 5th. That's going to be the real question. What is the turnout? If you tell us the vote share in these states, I bet we could make a prediction right now pretty easily. But that's the crystal ball we don't have yet. And that's what everyone's going to be fighting for down the stretch. But I will say one thing to compare this. When you look at the national polls, and a lot of times I hear my Democratic colleagues get really excited. Oh, I was like, to see Harris is up 4. She's up 5 points in a national poll. But if we remember, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by, I think it was 2.1% and lost narrowly. Joe Biden won very narrowly at 4.5%. So that number would tell me it's going to be really, really tight. And it's going to be a coin flip going right down to the end.
So let me ask just both of you then, what's going to make the difference? Is it a field campaign? Who's got enough people knocking on doors? Is there some other, what's going to make the difference in a tie race here?
I think the variable in this race is Harris. I think she didn't go through a primary. She's had a great month, a couple of months. I mean, it's very rare that you can win the nomination, pick your vice president, and then have a convention all in like 45 days. She was able to have like a great amount of time that any candidate would love. But because she didn't go through the primary, because she ran last time and I think she dropped out before even the first votes. So she, even though she's vice president, she wasn't super known. That debate was very good for her. I think she was able to do a few things. I think the Trump campaign made a mistake of really lowering expectations for her. They're constantly talking about her intelligence and things like that, which made the bar very easy for her to go over. And I think she also showed people that, I'm not a Biden sequel, and I'm not as far left as you think either. So she showed that. But I think that's the challenge for her going forward. Like I said, people know what they're going to get with President Trump. It's a classic incumbent versus challenger race. In many ways, Trump is the incumbent because he's so well known, and she's the challenger. So the question is, does she give people the confidence that she can do the job, that she's a better option than him? So I think it's really all about her. So whenever Trump kind of goes off on some tangent or kind of distracts the press, remember he's doing all that on purpose, and it's not changing anybody's minds about what they think about him. It's all about what people think about her, and can he change how you think about her, and can she give you the confidence that she can do the job?
Mike Muller, what do you think? What's going to be the difference here?
I think the big difference is who's going to really control the dialogue in these states that are really going to decide it. Because really this race, when it comes down to it, we talk about turnout, on our side, we're going to talk about reproductive freedom, and we're going to really try to make this election about a post-Dobbs era and carry over from 22 into 24 in a lot of these key areas. On the flip side, is this going to be about, the border and immigration? Who actually controls that dialogue when people make these decisions really, really late? That is going to tip the balance. It's true in most campaigns. If you control the dialogue, you're usually in a better position.
It's really right. Even if you're losing the argument, if the argument is the argument that you want to be having, one of my first legislative campaigns in New Jersey, we had put out a press release that our opponent had raised taxes like 35 times, and he argued with us for a week that he'd only raised taxes like 31 times, and we had an argument for a week about how many times he'd raised taxes, and at the end of the week we conceded that 4 were fee increases and the other 31 were tax increases, like, you win. And he was like, yeah, I won the argument, but we were on our message for the entire week.
Yeah, when you're explaining, you're losing, so.
I want to bring up something else and ask you guys to comment on it, because one of the things that, for those of us who are reading like the 5th article about the race in a paper, it's about how much each side has invested in their field campaign. The Republican side has largely outsourced this to places like Turning Point and other conservative pro-Trump organizations, and they go out and hire people to knock on doors and make phone calls in all of these key states. The Democrats have very much been talking about, we've raised all this money, and one of the places we're spending it is by investing in field offices and other such things, and getting people to knock on doors, etc. Is this going to make a difference? Is this like having a good field goal team, and just it might help with those last second 3 points, or is this not? It's really an air war and dialogue.
Yeah, look, I will say this. When it comes to field campaigns, and some of my colleagues, our folks in the Democratic side, we love to pride ourselves in like, hey, we've knocked on this many doors and we've had this many contacts. Look, in reality, when it comes down to, can you build real coalitions in communities? And so you can have the greatest field offices in the world, but look, we've watched on the other side, I've watched Republican campaigns across the country absolutely crush us because they were organizing through churches and community groups, and all of a sudden they didn't have the same field numbers, and all of a sudden we looked at election day and they surged on turnout. Look, we saw turnout surges, some may have been organic in 2021 here in New Jersey that worked against us. I will say that one of the real key things that you have to really look at is field is changing. It's not all about, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a torso and going knocking on a door. It's how are you using your data and tech, your analytics. You understand who your voter is, who you're trying to move, who needs to be motivated versus talking to, and preaching to the choir. So I think field takes a lot of different pieces. I wouldn't look at money alone. A lot of this it's qualitative versus quantitative field. I will take the qualitative version of a quantitative every day of the week.
Mike, you have a thought on field, the impact it might have?
It's funny, it's inverted from 20 years ago where the Republican Party didn't have anyone to outsource this to, so we took pride as the campaign and the RNC and the state parties and the county parties really having the infrastructure to do this, and we thought Democrats outsource it to unions or whoever, and we were happy to have it. It's funny now to see that it's inverted. I think it's like a mistake to outsource it, but if you don't have the money, it's better than nothing, and I think right now Trump spends a lot of money on legal bills and other things like that, so they're having that, but a group like Turning Point USA is not going to do the same job as the campaign because they're a conservative organization turning out conservatives, where in places like Pennsylvania, you need like moderates in Bucks County who maybe are Trump voters to turn out. And you'd rather have the campaign controlling that than an outside group which has ulterior motives and is going to be here after the campaign. You want a bunch of people like me and Mike who, if we lose, we're fired, and there's no more job anyway because the campaign's out of business on election day. You need people with that motivation as opposed to an outside organization that's going to husband some resources for next year for whatever project they have next.
Mike Muller, Mike DuHaime talked about, referenced the debate. The Trump-Harris debate, right. Said Kamala Harris did a lot of things that probably helped her in terms of what the public knew about her and saw of her. Do you have any thought, Mike Muller, on that debate? Did it make a difference in this campaign?
Yeah, it's interesting. At the moment, I would say that I think we all felt elated because it was a critical moment for Harris to show that she can go through a debate with him and not get sucked in. Because Donald Trump's the master of like dragging you in the quicksand and have you flop around there. That was what she was able to avoid that night. She actually had, at times, he looked rattled. It was a great moment. But then all of a sudden, it's like the proof in the pudding. You start moving that a few days later, and all that elation, you start looking at the poll numbers. It happened way too early in the race, where everything kind of normalized again. And I would say that right after the debate, we heard Donald Trump talking about wanting another debate. He clearly didn't like the outcome that night. But on the flip side, now we're hearing that Vice President Harris would like a debate late because that moment, it would have been a lot better if it happened in the final 10 days rather than nearly 2 months out.
Mike Muller, let me, I want to just keep on the debate theme, because one of the few things that could upend this race, in theory, is that we have a vice presidential debate coming up. And we have two smart guys, Vance and Walz, going to go head-to-head. Now, typically, I'll tell you as the political scientist, every study shows that no one really cares about the vice president when you're voting for president. It doesn't mean anything. But is this year different? Will that, because it's a debate between the two sides and two visions of America, you think the VP debate is going to have any real impact on this race?
I don't. I agree with you. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be theater. It'll be a lot of attention paid to it. Each one is going to try to do a good job, not attacking necessarily the other person, but the other person's standard bearer. I think the last time a vice presidential nominee really swung the election was probably 1960 when Johnson helped carry Texas for Kennedy, which obviously the race was so close he needed that for electoral college-wise. I don't really think so. They're both good. When you get to this level, the other thing is when you get to this level, like, you're really good at debating. You don't have gaffes. You don't make big mistakes. You try to score some big punches, but the other person's good at avoiding them. So they're two different folks, except for the fact that I'd say they're like two white guys from the Midwest, right? So I think people are going to look and they're going to act like they're really different when maybe they're not. Vance really does double down on Trump's populist message. I give Vance credit. He's doing more difficult interviews than the other three principals combined. I give Vance a lot of credit, and I think the Trump campaign probably wouldn't say that because it doesn't look good to Trump, but Vance is out there working, and he's good, and he's smart, and he's young, and he's not afraid of controversy. Obviously, he's not afraid to be offensive. He's not afraid to say things. Walz, I think, was good has been good, like that. I thought when the Democrats pick somebody and they proudly say, this is our hunting pro-gun veteran, football white guy from the Midwest. Woo! I obviously see where they're trying to go in terms of how to compliment Harris. So I'm interested to see how they play that. But at the end of the day, I think people go in and they look at Trump's name and Harris's name.
Mike Muller, do you agree the VP debate is going to be theater, but won't really have?
Yeah, it's not going to change a lot. And here's, I think, one of the challenges, for our side of it is that there is at least an expectation because of the way J.D. Vance has been profiled out there. I think his bar is a really easy one to cross. And I think he's going to wind up being in a position where people are looking to see the J.D. Vance that they're basically getting, just joked about on Comedy Central. And they're not going to get that. And I think that's going to be an advantage for him in this debate, but it's going to be relatively, a nothing burger.
All right. Mike Muller, let's start with you on this one. Just so we understand, for the Harris-Walz campaign, what's the clearest path to victory?
Look, I actually am going to say everyone loves to talk blue wall, and you're going to hear this whole thing about how it's Michigan and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. You're not going to hear that from me. I actually will tell you, I actually feel better about the path to North Carolina, and I was saying that before we actually have seen the gubernatorial nominee kind of implode. And I'm going to give it my at least loosely held theory is Wisconsin, whiter, rural state. There's a lot of reasons that it fits very well for Trump to do well in Wisconsin. I look at North Carolina and I see a little similarities to a decade plus ago in Virginia, where you have these college-educated, academic central northern areas of Virginia, much like Raleigh, that have had sprawl and growth that have been good for Democrats. And then you have a growing minority population in Charlotte, where it's very similar to what we saw in Richmond. So I actually think the demographics of North Carolina they're inching in that right direction, where I've been sitting there feeling like that's part of our blue wall strategy. But it's not crazy to think this thing is, if we win, it's 270, 268. Not crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think North Carolina and Georgia are very much still in play, even though North Carolina I don't think has gone Democratic since President Obama's first race in 2008, but I think it's very, very close. You're right, the shifting demographics of the South, especially the more moderate suburban areas that are not that different from, Morris County, New Jersey, in terms of how they vote now, very different than it was 20, 30 years ago. The path, though, for Trump is really Pennsylvania, which is why I'm surprised the Democrats didn't pick Josh Shapiro, because he's got 60+% approval ratings in Pennsylvania, and that blue wall is very real on the Republican side. Like, how do you break the Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin piece? That's really, really hard for Republicans. You used to need to win Florida and Ohio, and now Republicans kind of have those. They need to break one more of those. I think Pennsylvania is the most interesting one to me. I think it's the hardest one of the three. If you get Pennsylvania, because Philadelphia is bigger than Cleveland and bigger than Detroit and all that. Like, they're going to lose Philadelphia by 400,000 votes, but if they can, and they'll lose Cleveland by 200,000 votes. So if they can win there. They're going to win. Detroit. They're going to win. They can possibly win all three if they win Pennsylvania. So that's the one that I'm going to be watching the closest.
I want to talk just a little bit. We talked polling, which we all see again. It's tied, it's within the margin of error, but you guys look deeper than the headline on these polls. So, Mike DuHaime, let me start with you on this one. When you look at the subgroups, at the crosstabs of these polls, what are you seeing? Is there some kind of movement? Is there some intriguing number or trend that we should be watching out for?
I think what you look for is what the Trump campaign found in 2016 was what they called this hidden Trump vote. So they started to ask a series of questions that were not showing up in the public polls, and they were trying to find that. What they were doing is they were asking questions. If you were saying you were undecided, they were looking at other questions, and they were finding, if you said you were undecided, but you had a negative opinion of Hillary Clinton, and then they would ask a certain question that was really clever, which was basically, you got three choices, like, I hate Trump, and I hate everything he stands for. I love Trump, I love everything he stands for, and I don't really like Trump, but I like some of his policies. If you were like undecided, and you didn't like Hillary, and you had that middle ground, you were voting for Trump every time. And they found that. So that's kind of what I look for. Most public polls don't ask the questions that way, but what you try to look for is where is Vice President Harris's negatives? Because if you're kind of negative to both, that's the group that Trump was able to win in 2016, and that's
so
kind of.
You think that hidden Trump vote still exists?
I do. I absolutely do. I think there's still people out there who don't really want to say they're voting for him. They don't really need the agita when they're on the kid's soccer game or whatever. They don't want to talk about it. But I do think there are people that are like, yeah, that guy. I wouldn't talk like that, but I'm glad somebody does. There's still some people out there that absolutely.
Mike Muller, what are you seeing as you look deeper into these public polls?
Yeah, and I keep looking at the public polls. It's really hard to get a full read because it is a lot of times we look at public polls, and there's a reason why we do our own internals, and we're trying to figure out this a little bit deeper. We're trying to find intensity around certain issues. Who they trust on a certain issue. There's a lot of different variables. I will say the thing that probably strikes me more than anything about the idea of like a hidden Trump voter. You're not going to hear on the media, every time the polls are reported, no one's going to really go out there and sit there and say, you know what, it's like the polls are still wrong. Like there is this conversation, but we're internally having the conversation. How do you get it right? Because if you think about it, in 2021, the polling was way off according to a lot of people when you look at New Jersey races. Why was it? If you looked at it, the 2013 electorate, 2017 in a gubernatorial, it looked a certain way. But it was a much more higher Republican turnout, and then the unaffiliateds were much more conservative. So that really is the question. What's in the soup? Because we go through this debate all the time. I'm working at Florida Congressional right now where the debate is the district plus 10 Republican, plus 7 Republican, and that difference is can a Democrat actually take that race? And when you start really trying to break this down, I think really you're looking for intensity and enthusiasm more so than anything because it's really easy to segregate. They look like they're wearing a red jersey, they look like they're wearing a blue jersey. That's easy to figure out this year, and so it really is the intensity to see who's getting across there, so that's what we're looking for.
I'd look at two things too. I'd look at Harris's number, because Trump's number, you look at Trump's number, and he's not going to go much higher than that. So if he's at 45, he's have a hard time winning than if he's at 48. So I would look at like Trump's number, and I would also look at the third parties. Are they polling third parties? Because Jill Stein took more votes in every state in 2016 than was the margin for Donald Trump. RFK was polling very well until everybody figured out that he's an absolute lunatic, right? So and like kidnaps bears. And
I'm not sure he
parks.
figured it out, but
yeah, but
others have.
That number has dropped. So that independent vote could actually help Trump because Trump can win if he gets to like 47, 48. The question, I don't know if he can get to 50, 51. So that third party vote and how that hurts Harris is kind of an interesting thing to watch.
I'm just very happy that RFK didn't take my quarterback for vice president, so at least I have a good Jet season in front of me.
Me too.
Says the Jets fan.
We can agree on that.
Completely.
Let's try and bring this down to New Jersey. As much as we in New Jersey like to think of ourselves as being completely unique from the rest of the country, we actually are part of national trends, vibes, as is the term of the day. So let me ask you this, and Mike Muller, will start with you on key issues: environmental protection, taxes, transportation infrastructure, healthcare, all key issues for New Jersey. Are the presidential campaigns addressing these concerns of New Jersey's 9 million residents?
Look, I think in terms of addressing them in the campaign, we're going to see pieces of it, because we're obviously not a swing state. But ultimately, in terms of Vice President Harris being our standard bearer, our folks are excited. They feel good about it, because the list of issues, we line up really strongly along those issues. When it comes to climate change and transportation, there isn't much of an issue there. But I do think the national campaign that you see, if you're watching ads in those states, you're going to hear a much different version of the Harris campaign than we're feeling, broadly. But I think that on a lot of levels, when you really break it down, it's like we have a standard bearer of our party that aligns perfectly. I think that's a much more challenging thing for Republicans, because they're still trying to figure out who they are, because basically Trump hijacked their party.
Mike DuHaime, are the issues of concern to New Jersey being brought out in these campaigns? How are they doing in selling themselves here?
To the extent you care about kind of more nationalized issues, sure, like the economy and spending and foreign policy, yes, but they're not going to talk about New Jersey Transit or the Gateway Tunnel and barely the SALT deduction. I mean, they're not going to get into those nitty-gritty because our state is taken for granted, and so is New York. So really, for the most part, so to the extent that those national issues matter to all of us, yes, but to the extent that they're going to come in and talk about anything that is specific to us, no. I mean, it will have an impact on us, no doubt, who wins, but in terms of them addressing issues that are localized, not at all.
Historically, when one party wins the White House, the opposite party will win the New Jersey governor's race the following year. You can go back to 1988, George H.W. Bush's presidential win. That was followed by Democrat Jim Florio's victory in '89. 4 years later, Bill Clinton, a Democrat, wins the White House. The following year, a Republican, Christine Todd Whitman, wins for governor. And on this went, with the great exception being our last governor's race, where you had Biden victory followed by Governor Murphy's reelection.
Trust me, there were a lot of Democratic losses that year, so it was a bad one.
So my question is this, Mike DuHaime, let's start with you. Do you expect this historical trend to revert, to go back in 2025? That is, we should expect, if there's a Harris victory, we should expect a Republican win for the governor's race, and vice versa?
I wouldn't say you expect a win, but I would say it absolutely matters. And I would point to 2021 as a reason. Biden won. It was a great year for Republicans, and Democrats still won the governor's race. Now, Murphy didn't win by nearly as much as he won the first time, but he won. And the old joke, what do you call a congressman who wins by one vote? Congressman. So, he won. He's governor. So, getting close doesn't matter in politics. You have to win. No second place prizes. So I think it matters. I think what happens if Trump wins, you're going to see an electorate like 2017, where a state like New Jersey is furious, and they're ready to coming out with pitchforks and protesting guys like Leonard Lance, who are the most moderate guy in the Congress, and they're ready to throw him out. So I think if Trump wins, is very, very good for the Democrats and for the gubernatorial race. Obviously, they will have just lost the presidential. But if Harris wins, then Republicans have a much better chance. It doesn't mean it's over, because believe me, when I did Governor Christie's race in 2009, if you would have told me about historical trends, I would have said Barack Obama just won New Jersey by 750,000 votes, and I got to run in 361 days from now. I don't care about historical norms. We just got our doors blown off, and we got our doors blown off last time, and Corzine won a couple in a row, and so the historical trends matter less to the people who are actually running the campaigns, because it looks really bad at the moment. But it will matter. It will influence. If Harris wins the presidency, it does not mean Republicans are going to win, but it means Republicans are going to have a better shot because of that. People revert back to the other side.
Mike Muller,
Yeah,
agree? Yeah.
I agree completely. I feel like the course correction, I've been preaching it forever because like there's one of the good things as operatives is that, especially when you're in power, I think back to 2009, I remember sitting in a room with our assembly caucus and basically preaching doom in February. I had this nice little slideshow of how Corzine's numbers stood up against all these other Democratic governors who lost their seats around the country over the last 20 years. So I was like trying to warn them of what was coming. But in all reality, it's like, there is two levels of it. It's like, it will be very, very determinative of like where is the wind blowing with you or against you. But then the campaigns are going to take on their own life. And you're going to have to go out there and be able to find your way through it. Because we have so many more Democrats in this state and the growth that we've seen in the Democratic Party, we could withstand something. But what happened in 2021, we withstood in the gubernatorial race. We did not withstand it in a lot of places, especially here in South Jersey, that were near and dear to my heart. So I will tell you that it's real.
Yeah, and I would say like the state is just very different than when Christie B. Whitman won in 1993. That was a big upset, but there were a few 100,000 more Democrats than Republicans. Now there's 900,000 more Democrats than Republicans. The state was probably 80% white at that point, and now it's 55% white. Pretty soon it'll be a majority-minority state by 2030, 2040 census, and that diversity, Republicans haven't done well, let's just say that. So I think it's a harder state to win for Republicans than it was then.
We got a couple more minutes. We're not going to get to everything we wanted, but I do want to just hit on some of the congressional races. We heard from Congressman Kim and Curtis Bashaw earlier at this event. Mike Muller, what's your take on how do things stand on the U.S. Senate race here in New Jersey?
Look, I was not alive the last time that the Republicans won the U.S. Senate race in New Jersey.
You're so
Neither was I, even though I'm a little older.
So ultimately, I really don't believe that we're going to see a different outcome this time. And I think that Congressman Kim, who's represented a very difficult district, you heard earlier on his pre-recorded message, having won a Trump district twice, he's battle tested, and I expect he will do really well. And look, the larger question of the control of the U.S. Senate, that's an area where we can't be as bullish as Democrats, and we have a very narrow path there. It's a path, but it is really narrow.
I think this is the best chance for Republicans to win in 24 years. And now, to your point, Republicans haven't won in 50 some odd, so you're grading on a curve, I realize, when you say that. But I think the parallels to 2000, that was a congressman named Bob Franks, who was a centrist, kind of center-right candidate, just like Curtis Bashaw is. I mean, Curtis is a very successful businessman. You all just saw him. He's also a gay married man, pro-choice. He's not going to be lumped in the same box as kind of the national Republicans. And I would say part of the reason that I find the parallel to 2000, even though John Corzine spent $1 gazillion that year, is he wasn't super known. For the last 25 years, you've had Cory Booker or Bob Menendez was appointed and then an incumbent. Cory Booker was a star before he ever ran for office. Frank Lautenberg came back and ran in 2002. The Democrats always come in with a huge name ID advantage. And like members of Congress in New Jersey, like nobody knows who they are, even in their own districts, no less like, outside their district. It's just so hard to get known. New York media market, Philadelphia media market, the first and fourth largest media markets in the country. The 11 o'clock news is not covering your local congressman. So nobody in Bergen County knows who Andy Kim is or Curtis Bashaw, and that's very different for Republicans. We're actually running against somebody who doesn't have that built-in name ID, although Democrats do start with a big advantage. And Curtis is a different kind of Republican that I think is unique and a very, very good candidate.
Let me ask, we'll do two quick questions to get through this. We have one competitive race for Congress. It's District 7. And you've got the incumbent, first-term incumbent, Tom Kean Jr., and you've got Sue Altman, who is a leader in the progressive movement here in New Jersey, as the Democratic nominee. Any chance we're going to see an upset there and Altman wins over the incumbent?
No.
Yeah, we only got time. You can't.
Trying to help you with the time.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll give you the longer answer. Is that look? This is a very competitive race. It's an R+1 district. Frankly, I could say from having served during congressional redistricting, the Republicans wanted a much better district, and they were right. They should have got a much better district if they were really going to put this thing away for Congressman Kean. But I would say it is going to be it's a tough road. What I've seen in that area and region back in 2020. Joe Biden wound up carrying the 25th legislative district in a special election, by low double digits, and we wound up then losing narrowly. And there was about almost a double-digit gap into the state leg race where we thought we had an opportunity. It's tough.
I ran that one. Tony's my guy.
I love Darcy Drager. That was a tough one.
The thing that Kane has is the more Republican part of the district will turn out and just do well for Kane, and then he's represented the more Democratic part of the district for 20 years in the state legislature. So the eastern part of the district, which is more moderate, where Democrats need to run up numbers, he's actually going to win because he's represented it for 20 years.
This is just you have to give a quick answer, no explanation. Currently, the U.S. Senate controlled by the Democrats, House controlled by the Republicans. What does it look like in the new Congress?
Republicans are going to get the U.S. Senate 51 or 52, and the House, man, it's a toss-up. I think the House could actually flip back Democrat. I have a long answer on this about control and people liking neither party to have full control. So I think the Democrats may.
Mike? Quick
we went back to House, and watch out in Florida. Don't sleep on it. Debbie McKenzie-Powell is going to win that race, and that's how we're going to get to 50-50 with Vice President Harris putting us over the top.
There we go. Or potentially walls there. All right, folks, it is time to wrap up. So I just want to be able to take the prerogative of them asking me to stand here to conclude with this. In most of our daily lives and certainly in our business life, we have grown accustomed to service that adjusts to our very specific needs. There's no need to go to the mall anymore. You just go online and you can order the exact size and color and print that you want, everything, customization at its best. Commercials tell us over and over, you get only the insurance you want, you get only the channels you want. Personalized services everywhere. And it has served both the public and the business community well. But I'd like to remind all of us that we should remember politics is not customized. Or rather, politics is not an Uber, politics is mass transit. In politics, our politicians won't and really can't cater to every one of your specific needs. You want someone who agrees with you, as these gentlemen have certainly know. You want someone who agrees with you 100% of the time you look in the mirror. But beyond that, you don't get that. Politics is mass transit. You pick a candidate to get you as close as to whatever your vision is of America, and then you walk from wherever it was, like we all did when we took a bus somewhere. And so as each of us considers which candidates to vote for up and down the ballot, I'd suggest we think of this process like taking mass transit. Get as close as you can, and with the help of the Southern New Jersey Development Council, we walk, or rather organize from there. On that note, let's give a round of applause for our great speakers. Appreciate it. I'm supposed to turn it over to Glenn, who's going to wrap this whole thing up, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Mike and Mike, for that great discussion. We also need to thank maybe I should tell you who I am. Good morning, we're still morning. Glenn Davila from Performance Marketing. I am the chairman of the Development Council, and I'm your closer for this morning. So thank you to Dr. Dworkin, thank you to Mike and Mike for that great discussion. We also like to thank Dr. Brigid Harrison and our South Jersey legislators for that discussion earlier. We do not support the senator's comments on fishing. That's his own. We're going to keep that one to him, but otherwise we got some pretty close alignments, so we appreciate that. We appreciate them sharing with us their perspectives, and we thank them for all of their service to us here in New Jersey. A couple of quick notes. After today, you'll receive an email with photos and video. We recorded everything today, so you'll be able to watch that from wherever you are, and that photography and videography is courtesy of Stokes Creative Group. They are a fantastic member that does a lot of work for us here, so we thank you very much for that. You'll also receive an email with an online survey. We need your perspective to understand how to make this event better every year, so please take a minute and fill that out. And on each table, you'll see one of these. This is the new issue of the Chronicle. Please pick it up. Please read it. It's a great advertising opportunity, lots of great information, and if you have content, contact the office and we'll get that content in there so we can share it with the rest of our membership. Also thanking, there were earlier, several of our board members, lots of our board members, so thank you, Development Council board members. We can't do this without you. You are the lifeblood of this organization, and all of our organizers, the dozens and dozens of people who help make Sound Off the great event that it is today. Some special and we really need these guys, the sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind is our title sponsor. Resorts Casino Hotel, my first full-time job right here at Resorts. So thank you for hosting us every year. It's such a great, and the home of East Coast Gaming, right? The first one, 1978. SNJDC staff, always such a great team, always makes this such a great event for us. And we invite you to join us poolside. We're going upstairs. We're going to have a little bit more fun before you all decide not to go back to work. So thank you very much, and we'll see you upstairs.